attending the class. If you are a photographer, if you aspiring to be a photographer, there are key things that you need to know, and I want to share those with you all. So I want it to be as open as possible. So if you have questions while I going through everything, feel free to ask the questions, and if I could stop off, I could touch on it at the same time, I will. Now, I created a lot of notes because there's a lot of things that I want to go through to make sure that you understand. So you're gonna see that I reading, and the reading is so I don't get off track or I don't ramble on about anything else, and everything should flow properly because there is a lot of information. All right. So if you have any first-time photographers or people who just starting out, this is great that you are here at the beginning, and we are gonna go straight into it as soon as I could get my notes where they're supposed to be. This is something I talk about here. Yeah. Okay, so while I'm putting up the stuff, I wanna start by telling you guys a little bit about me, about where I got my background, where I did a bit of training, who I worked under, and who worked with me. So I've been doing photography for about 10 years. I got my start with as a graphic designer. Actually, I got my start as a graphic designer, and I worked with iCandy for quite some time, and they basically taught me how to retouch skin. You know, iCandy always had that extra oomph what people used to like. So iCandy did that. I went to, there was a place called Hollywood Studios, and with them I was there as a graphic designer and got, I want to say promoted, but I got hired as a photographer as well. So I was there doing photography and graphic design. So after a while, I went on to teach a few other places. So I went to work at a few other places. I worked at Sandals as a photographer. I've worked at what's that place name? Anyway, probably ain't supposed to call the name. There we go. So I worked at Sandals as a photographer. I worked at BVS, that's the name of the place. So Bahamas Visual Service. If you all know anything about photography over Atlantis, BVS had this place on lock. Nobody could tell BVS nothing. We were shooting like 3 to 4 weddings a day. And usually these were shorter weddings, maybe an hour, 2 hours. But they would have like maybe 6 hour, 7 hour weddings some days. I think the longest wedding I ever worked in one day was 16 hours. And the longest wedding I worked on a whole was 3 days, and that's them Indian weddings. Indians days beyond some other stuff. But yeah, so I worked with BBS. I worked at 3 different sign companies, and I also worked at Subway. Wouldn't be who I am if I say, okay, I worked at Subway, and I ain't ashamed. So you could also call me a sandwich artist, I guess. But yeah, so doing it for quite some time. Doing it for quite some time. I started to do it on my own, started to do get into it a little bit more. So some of the clients I have now, I could call names like Sun Oil or Shell. I've done work with Diamonds International. I've worked with Aura, hotels, Malia, Atlantis, Bahama. I've done with banks, Scotiabank, Commonwealth Bank. So I've done quite a bit of photography. I ain't saying I'm the greatest, but I've been through. So that's just a little bit about what you need to know about your instructor right now, me. So yeah, what I want to go into is, what I want to start with is the basics. And with these, we look at the three main settings, or the three things that usually controls your image or how your image comes out. That'll be your shutter speed, your aperture, and your ISO. So if you really think about it, I have a bowl of cereal there because it is like making cereal. Um, you know, everything complements the next, and they work well. They work very well together. I get all kind of stuff here, but everything works together. So the first one would be the shutter speed, and the shutter speed is the length of the time that the camera shutter is open. Sorry. Right. So it's the length of the time that the camera shutter is open, and it exposes light to the camera sensor. Essentially, how long the camera spends taking a photo. So you see that 1/500 of a second that the image is, well, the little guy running here is frozen, and at half of a second, he is very, very blurry. So this is in detail the shutter speed. So it exposes the sensor to more light, which helps to either freeze or adds blur to your image. Right. So the next one would be the aperture. And the aperture can be defined as the opening in a lens in which light passes to enter the camera. It is expressed in numbers like you will see here, f2.8, f4, f5.6, f8, and so on. So it can be controlled through the lens or the camera. It has two uses. So it lets light in, and it also controls the blur in the background. So dealing with the aperture, say if I have, I'm gonna use that, my cell phone. Say I have my cell phone at this distance. Now, because I'm using the laptop camera lens, you could see me in focus and you could see the camera in focus as well. But if I was to bring it just a little bit closer, and that's what the aperture does, and you adjust that number, it'll either put only the phone in focus, and it'll have me completely blurred in the background, or you could have me in focus, but it'll have the phone completely blurred up front. So different lenses are going to give you different results. So just how different tools are going to tell different stories. Yeah, and then the ISO, which is here. It measures the sensitivity. Oh, we didn't reach there yet. It measures the sensitivity of the image. It measures the sensitivity of the image sensor. So you could think of it as fake light. Basically, if you look at the first one, it's a very low number. So there's not much light coming in. And at 1600, there's a lot of light coming in. Doesn't mean that it got bright outside, doesn't mean that somebody got the big strobe in the sky and they lighten the whole area. It's the camera itself or the ISO creating fake light to make the image appear as if it has more light. So the same principles apply in film photography. So the lower the number, the less sensitive your camera is to light, and the finer the grain. Higher numbers mean your sensors become more sensitive to light, which allows you to use your camera in darker situations, like what we have here at 100 and 1600. An example of a situation you might want to use a higher ISO would be if you're shooting a indoor sporting event and there's low light and your subject is moving around. You want to use a higher ISO, and also you want to take the time to probably use a faster shutter speed to help freeze the movement. So again, so if you look at shutter speed as the milk, if you look at the aperture as the cereal, and if you look at the ISO as the spoon, you have yourself a nice little meal, and you should be good to go and eat how you want to eat. All right. if Steph, if any questions come through while I move in, you could let me know, please, because I want to push through these.
You're good to go.
All right. Okay, so we're gonna go into the white balance now. And it's the process of removing unrealistic color cast so that the object that is white in person is gonna appear white in your image. So proper camera white balance has to take into account the color temperature of the light source, which refers to the warmth of either the tungsten lights or the coolness of whichever light you're getting it from. So say you're shooting an indoor event again, and the inside there's using orange light. So we'll go into probably like a hotel room that they really like to have these bright orange lights going across the room. In order to shoot properly in there without having a incorrect color image, you would want to use the white balance that your camera has. So they have the Kelvin scale, which you'll see, which is basically would give you full control of how you set it. So you can turn it down to 1,000, or you can turn it up to 10,000. The lower it is, the warmer it is. The higher it is, the cooler it'll be. So if you're shooting sunrise outside early in the morning, and you notice that your image is a bit blue, because the earth ain't really warm up yet, or there's not a lot of warmth around, you might want to shoot with a lower Kelvin, or you might want to set your camera mode or your white balance to either cloudy or daylight, and the camera will set it for you, and you'll have a much better image. I think, yeah, I don't want to spend too much time on that. And we're going to go into the focus mode. So this will be the last one for the basics. All right. So the focus modes, there are 4 primary focus modes, but I have 3 here. So I only want to look at these 3. The other one is, okay, so it's continuous, AI servo, single focus, manual, and automatic. I'm not going to touch on automatic, but I'm going to go over the 3 that we have here. So continuous. So if something is moving and you want to use, you'd want to use continuous. If you're shooting an athlete, and let's say you're standing at the end of the track field and the athlete is running to you, the continuous focus will lock onto your subject, and once that subject is moving, your camera is gonna continue to refocus onto that subject. So you wouldn't have to worry about, okay, hey, he's out of focus now. Let me lift up my finger and try focus him again. No, so it's basically, the camera is basically readjusting your focus as your subject is moving. It'll keep them sharp, it'll keep them intact as they move towards the camera. So a few good things to shoot in AI servo or continuous would be if you have pets, and you can't tell a puppy that, hey, sit there, let me take your picture. He probably can get excited and he can break off running. Another one is kids. If you're shooting say a birthday party and you got a bunch of kids running around, they rarely stand still. So in order to try and keep them in focus as much as possible, you'd want to shoot in continuous. All right. The next one we're going to look at is single focus. All right. So single focus works best when your subject isn't moving. That's if they're, say, standing up at a podium, or you're shooting a model and you're modeling, I know where to go. You'd want to shoot in single focus because she ain't really going nowhere. You also, if you're shooting a room, you'd want to shoot the room in single focus, because again, the room ain't going nowhere. So you can set your focus point and keep and keep everything still and keep everything in focus. And then you have manual focus. So manual focus basically is what it says, manual. So you control your focus manually, either by the lens most of the time. So it works best in situations like if I'm shooting, in a nightclub, and there's a lot of noise. People can't really hear me, or people can't. It's dark. It's usually dark, and I can't get a good focus on anybody. I may want to switch over. I may want to switch over to manual, just so I have that freedom to say, okay, hey, I can quickly take this photo without missing the moment or without having to wait on the camera to focus. So that's why I would shoot in manual. Now, I wouldn't recommend it for if you don't practice it. I would not recommend it because you can miss a lot. You might think that something is sharp, and you go right back into post and you zoom in on that, and the whole image just blurry. So you would want to practice it as much as you can before you actually say, okay, hey, let me try this out in the field. Let me try this out for a client. All right. And y'all don't mind me if I take pauses. Either I can need something to drink to quench my palate, or I can be going through notes to make sure I ain't miss nothing. Just a lot of movement. Yep. All right, cool. So that's that. Let me see what I have going on this side. And once we get from here, we're gonna move to scouting or choosing locations. And when I say location, I don't mean necessarily. I don't necessarily mean like choosing, oh, where do I go and shoot? I'm thinking more of, I mean, well, that too, but not only where am I shooting, but how am I shooting? What is in my viewfinder? What is on my screen? What is annoying me, or what do I need to move? Stuff like that. So basically your composition. All right. There we go. So locations. So there are a few things you want to take into account when dealing with location, not only in the sense of where you shoot, but your objects, the objects in your frame, and your composition. Now I have a lot of pieces for this. All right, cool. So there are quite a number of things, as you can see here. And what most photographers do is they would subconsciously or not knowing, they would look for things in their background like this, and like geometry, balance, parallel lines, symmetry, color elements, depth, shadows, silhouettes, reflections, patterns, repetition, framing, contrast, lens flare, and things like paintings and art pieces, which is walls, surfaces, and different textures. So everything comes together when you go out and you take a photo. When you choose in your location, when you say, okay, hey, I want this in my background. I don't want this in my background. Like I said, there's quite a few things here, but I don't want to go into all of them. I just want to focus on balance, shadows, and contrast, because I think that's what we look at the most when we take a photo. So balance in the background or balance in the subject, the shadows that the subject casts or that the light casts on the shadow, on the subject, and the contrast that the contrast of the subject from the background, or anything that you shoot, basically just the contrast. Cool. So if we're looking at the definition of balance, If we're looking at the definition of balance, it'll be the condition in which different elements are equal in their correct proportions. So not to be confused with the rule of thirds. And if you're a somewhat seasoned photographer, you should have an idea of what the rule of thirds is and how that goes across your frame. So balance shouldn't be confused with the rule of thirds or placing objects in those thirds, but it's a technique by itself. So in order to balance your photo, you need to harness the best balance properties of any location. If there are too many elements on one side of the photo, the photographic scale is gonna tilt. So if you ever look at an image and it may be a nice image, but everything just seems a little bit off to the right, or it seemed right heavy or it seemed left heavy, the image may not be balanced properly. And all of these things, play with our mind. We may not know exactly what it is that we're looking at, but those things play with our mind. All right, so in order to achieve a visual balance, you'll need to place points of interest evenly across the frame. Jeez, I keep pressing. I have two screens in front of me, by the way. So I have the one that my notes are on, and then I have the one that I am showing you guys, so I can follow along with you. So this is an example of balance. Man, I wish I could ask you a question. Y'all can answer me. But yeah, so for any location
Go ahead,
you choose, you face.
You can do that, Seven. Just ask them to unmute their mics.
Okay, I mean, well, if you let me say this now. So if you feel like you want to get a bit more involved, you can unmute your mic. So if you have any questions, or if you see anything that you wanna point out, you can do it, so I can stop and address it at the same time. So that's for anybody in here who feel like they have questions as I go. But if I ask the question, feel free to answer as well. Yeah, and that's what it. So yeah, getting back to choosing balance for your location. So you're faced with hundreds of objects around you. So figuring out how to achieve proper balance can be scary. So it's best to break it down. You'll need to know how to balance people, how to balance objects, or any dominant tangible things in the frame, and how to balance space. That's open areas, negative space, and landscapes and stuff like that. So with the image I have here, you'll see that the image on the left and the image on the right are basically the same image, but the image on the left is a little bit off balance. Sorry, is a little bit more off balance than the image on the right. You can see that the priest or the officiant, he's cut off to the side. The bride's shoulder is falling off of the frame. The groom is center, and I think that's where my initial focus went. It's like, hey, there's the groom. Boom, let me take this photo. Snap, it's the groom, and then I looked at it again. I was like, okay, hold on, something is a little bit off. So all I did was move slightly over to my left, and I was able to get the groomsmen closer to the other side of the frame. I was able to bring the priest in and achieve a balance of balancing people, right? So basically, when you're balancing people, so if you're shooting a wedding, if you're shooting a birthday party, a club event, or corporate event, you're gonna need to know how to balance people. And what I want to move on to next is, so if anybody have anything with that, handle that now. What I'm going to move on to next is balancing objects. I think I have a slide.
I had a question. How do you balance people? Like, how do you know when they're balanced?
So again, if you look at the image on the left, and you're not so much balancing the people by themselves, but you're balancing them in the frame. So the image on the left, it's a little bit heavy on the left side. So like I say, you got the priest's head weighing that side down. You got the bride's shoulder falling off, and there's more space on the right of that image. So all I did was move over to the left just a little bit, just to create an equal space on either side. So with the space behind the priest and the space on the side of the groomsman, it creates a visual balance. So that helped? Or
Yes, thank you.
okay, great, beautiful. That's what I like to hear. Right, so we're gonna move on to balancing objects, and the same principle applies when you're balancing objects. Oh, this was a close-up of the image if anybody couldn't see it from that far. Priest is on the left, it's a bit heavy on that side, and then it just seems a bit more balanced now or equal. So balancing objects. Oh, and one quick note I'd like to make as well is every photo that you're gonna see through the slides or through my examples are photos that I've taken. So I didn't pull any images offline. So I went through my entire gallery over the last year or two, and I just pulled different images. So you guys can see, okay, this is exactly what he did, or this is how he did it. Yeah. So balancing objects. Let me read directly from here. So it's fun to balance objects, but the trick is to know what objects to use and where to use them. Sometimes it's easy to choose which object should be dominant, especially if there's only one. But if you're shooting, if you're shooting a model next to a stop sign, like boom, model here, and you want to use the stop sign, man. You might want to take the stop sign out, but if you want to use the stop sign, model here, stop sign there, boom, easy. That's balancing the object with the subject, or a tree, for example. Put the tree on one side of the frame, put the subject on the other side of the frame. Yeah, so what you'd want to think about is what happens when you have multiple objects. Like the image that I have up now, this is a function. I can't remember if it's a wedding or an event or anything like that, but it is a decor show, and clients, especially brides and stuff, they love their details because they spend so much time and energy getting the stuff, or getting everything to look right. So yeah, what I did here was use the glasses on the left to achieve balance with the negative space that I have on the right. So there isn't, how do I say this? So it's not completely empty. It is negative space. There's nothing there, but it's not completely empty. So again, I'm using one of the basics. Control my aperture, so I get that depth of field, and I put my subject to the left, and I use the background that's there. Even though you can't see it, I use the background that's there to create a visually appealing image. Right. So when you ask yourself, or when you find yourself trying to balance an object, you want to ask yourself these 5 simple questions. So, which object should be the largest or the most dominant? Which object is the brightest? Which object has the most dominant vertical lines? Which objects create a pattern? And which object has the most contrast? So I want to see if I have another example here. Oh, sorry, I put all these together at one time. Okay, boom, I do have another example here. So this is again balancing objects. Now, I'm sure at least half of you, if not all of you, can look at this image and say, okay, hey, this is either a you know, females there. This is either a wedding or a ball or something like that. They go into you know that they're going to be females. They're going to be dressing up. Going to be wearing shoes, or they're going to be wearing their heels. You may notice the smaller size shoes there, so you know there's going to be a little girl there. And then you notice the smaller dress. Again, this photo is in black and white, and I think if we can go through the 5 questions to ask yourself what's going on here, like it'll be very easy to see. So which object should be the largest or the most dominant? I chose the shoes. I went inside the room and they had the dresses. I think the dresses were in the closet. I was like, okay, let me do a shot with these. I hung the dresses up exactly how I wanted them. And I, instead of focusing on the dresses, because the dresses would have been a lot, they would have been flat against the wall. And if I went into them, then you would have seen all the texture on the wall or the light switch on the wall and stuff like that. It wouldn't have created it wouldn't have been so appealing. So taking the shoes away from the dresses, choosing that as my focus point to say, okay, these should be larger or these should be more dominant. And then which object is the brightest. This image is in monotone or black and white. So the brightness doesn't play that big of a role here, but you can tell that there is one dress there that is brighter than the other one, or that the shoes in the center are in contrast or brighter than the shoes to the left and to the right of it. Even though you still have another pair of shoes there that's bright as well, they're not the focus. Which object has the most dominant vertical lines? You can tell that the frame of the window, or I think that's a door maybe, that the dresses are hanging on, they have very strong vertical lines. So you'd want to balance, you want to put balance in the place where you balance off the edges of the door. I wish I could see where I'm going. But you want to make sure you have balance on both edges. They are nice and even, and then you want to balance out the shoes themselves. So you have the center shoes, and then you have 2 shoes to the side of that, and then 2 shoes to the side of that. And those objects, the objects that create the most contrast. Again, it is in black and white, but the contrast is the shoes against the softer background. The contrast is the floor itself, or the blurriness of the floor directly up front versus the shoes versus the blurriness of the background. All right, let me see. I'm trying to remember if I did have another example after that, but if not, let me see. Okay, so this is another one of balancing objects. I have this model here, and there's a chair inside the frame, but she's not using the chair. So basically, it is only there as a prop, but it has to be balanced in order to create a decent image. So again, I look for the vertical lines. I look for the contrast. Her skin tone on the yellow. I look for what is going to be the brightest. There's a white chair inside this image. There's a white chair there, but you're somehow drawn to her face. And we're going to touch more on that when we get into posing. And you'll see why. All right. So if any questions there, I'm going to skip over this one real quick. Let me see. We're going to go into balancing space next. So this is another very crucial, very important one when you're taking photos. So balancing space is a technique where you balance a photo either with other people or with objects. It could usually be a 2-step process. So the first step would be balancing the photo, and then paying attention to the space on the left and on the right, on the left and on the right of the frame. So whether it be with people, whether it be with objects, the distance won't have to be exactly the same, but it should be close. So she is in the third on this. Yeah, so she's in the third on this, and then there's a lot of empty space off to the left of the frame. So what I did was take the veil, and I had my assistant hold the veil and just throw it up. Now, usually, I don't know if y'all ever work with veils, but usually veils don't just blow in the wind, especially if they're weighted, or if they have like stuff like flowers, like how she have a bunch of flowers on this. They don't just blow in the wind. So you normally would need somebody to take the veil and either hold it up until you're ready, or fluff it out. I can't say my eye. Or fluff it out like that when you before you take the photo. Right. So this is a decent example of balance in space. Now, as I go through these photos, I will critique them a little bit, because you're not never perfect. But I will critique them a little bit, and I would say that I could have created a bit more balance with the arbor in the background, or with the frame in the background, just by taking her over to my right or her left just a little bit. I could bring her there just a little bit more and use the arbor as almost a frame for her. But yeah, it is what it is, and we still came up with an amazing image. So that's what it is. That's what's balancing space. All right, let's see what we got after this. This is another example of balancing space. Whew, and you're all just thinking about this. This was a very stressful shoot. The amount of people that you see here, none of them speak English, or none of them fully speak English. So my challenge was to get these 100 people, or I think it was like just maybe a little over 100 people, to get these guys down on the beach, following my direction, and setting up a proper photo. So it's never as easy as, okay, hey guys, go down here, everybody look at me. It's never that easy. They talking, they doing their own thing. But balancing the photo, you will see that I have a set of people at the very bottom. I asked them to kneel down. The people behind them, they may be kneeling, but standing up. And then we just moved it back. I'm also on a ladder, and I had to take into account the rocks that are in the frame. I had to take into account the jet skis that are in the frame, the beach in the background, because that's what they want to see. That's why they came to the Bahamas. The beach in the background, the amount of sky that I'm adding, and the amount of sand that's directly in the front of them. So it's almost equal on the top and on the bottom. I think there may be just a little bit more space above, because there's more interest above the image than just the sand. And then on the left and on the right. Now, to the left, off a frame of this image, was the guys who owned the jet ski. They were under a tent, and they were doing what jet ski owners do. To the right, I actually had to move the jet skis over, just so that the jet skis won't be directly behind behind the crowd. So it won't look like the jet ski riding on top of anybody's head. So I had to move those over. And at the same time, I had to make it quick, and I had to keep their attention. So after I set my background, then I moved them into place. So I knew exactly where I wanted them, and how I wanted to balance them off. I asked everybody to look towards me. Mind you, I on a ladder. I all the way up in the sky, I on the ladder. And I probably I'd say maybe 15 to 20 feet away, zooming in. Again, they don't speak English, so I have my translator on the side of me. And I shouting. So I given them the energy that they need. So I shouting at them, but he's shouting at them as well, because when he hear me say it, he know they know what I saying. So he says it with the same energy that I gave them. And we're gonna touch on balancing energies a little bit later. But yeah, this was a image that achieved proper balance, and one that I'm very proud of. Is the water looks so nice. Good. This is another one. With balancing space, and I'm going to go over it very quickly. And this also has. Well, I guess I can move into shadows and contrast as well. But you use this objects that are around you, like the gas pumps. I did this image for Sun Oil or Shell for their promotion in December. They were giving away the same vehicle. As big as this car looking, this car in nowhere near as big. But just playing around with the angles, being able to balance the space where I have the car coming more towards the frame. I have the image of the Shell station itself in the background, and I also have the image of the Shell promotion off to the right. So if it wasn't for that Shell promotion on the right, it could have been more left heavy. Same deal. If it wasn't for the station itself, where the pumps are, it could have been right heavy. So it's all about finding a proper balance when you shoot an image. I did do quite a few of these for them, but this was one I pulled up to give a proper example. Okay, cool. So we're gonna go into shadows next. So photographers tend to pay attention more to light. We think of light as one of the most important aspects of photography. So on the other hand, shadows may seem less important, simply a lack of light. So this would be a major mistake. For light, light is really important because light is nothing without shadows. You know, if I'm making sense there. It's as simple as me. I have two lights set up in here. So pointing at me. You would not be able to see me if it weren't for the shadows that were created from the light hitting me. So you have a good idea of the depth of my chin, or how long my fingers is just by looking at the shadows after light hit them. So blah blah blah. Okay, so for light isn't anything without shadows. Shadows are not simply a dark mass that borders the light, but rather they are an entity just as alive as the light. So shadows shape and shadows draw attention. They integrate with the light to produce striking photographic opportunities. If we are to reach our full potential as photographers, y'all, I being a philosopher. And I write so much stuff. But if we are to reach our full potential as photographers, we must think in the terms of mastering shadows as well as mastering light. I have detailed 5 uses of shadows to create dynamic lighting or a dynamic photo. Shadows can be used to direct a viewer's attention. They can. This is because shadows often have shape. You're like biting up all my words. Shadows often have shape. When a shape shadow points to the center of. When a shadow is shaped, it points to the center of interest. In either case, the photo is strengthened as the center of the interest is reinforced by the use of shadows. So shadows create contrast and add drama. Shadows create focus. They direct attention. Shadows reveal form, and shadows reveal texture. So let me see what I have here. Okay, so this is a good use of light versus shadow. So the sun is, you'll see that the sun is setting. It is a nice image. It's lit well. The sun is setting. She has on a very beautiful dress. But if you notice that the trees that are in the background, you wouldn't be able to really point them out if I had my strobe blasting towards her. They the, there's a contrast of her and the trees. So you can see her a lot clearer. You can see her a lot better without shedding light on the trees as well, which would draw more attention to the trees themselves. Let me see. One of the most powerful uses of shadow is for the creation of contrast to produce a dramatic effect, and people's attention is automatically drawn to areas of high tonal contrast. However, tonal contrast cannot occur without shadows. It is the interplay of light and shadows that create the attention grabbing contrast. An example of this use of shadows would be a dramatic sunset, perfectly there, where the sun punches through the gaps in the cloud or any areas of light that are surrounded by dark areas. So again, the light that is coming through the trees or that is hitting her from across the shoulders or the legs, that creates a very strong contrast, or it shadows that you see that help form and shape the image. All right, now I think I have another one here as well. This is another good use of shadows. So this is a. Could anybody tell me what color? Okay, so the background looks brown, but it is not a brown background. If you could tell me what color the background is, 2 points to you. What color you feel it is? Anybody?
Is it black? Is it black maybe?
No, it's not. It's not a black background. I'm gonna give one more try.
White?
There you go. It is a white background. So when you would tell that to people, they'd almost be shocked. Like, how you get a brown background or such a dark background from using white? And this isn't like an off white. This isn't like a beige or anything like that. This is a true white background. The reason it looks this way is because of how I use the lights and the shadows inside the studio. So I removed, this is Nakas, by the way. I'm gonna try and call people by name. So I removed Nakas from the background itself because I know, okay, because he's a male, because what he wanted to achieve was a stronger image, and shadows. Oh, that's another one. And shadows really help. Shadows really help with that. So I removed him from the background. So there is no strobe light or no extra light hitting the white background. I have my strobe directly on my left side, coming into his hair and across his face. That's what's hitting the front of his body. I have another light, a strobe light, to use as hair light for the background. So that is another light coming directly from behind him, almost from right here behind him. That's directly pointed at the back of his head, and it has a snoot. I think this has the snoot on it. If you guys don't know what a snoot is, I have some stuff here. Let me just grab a snoot for you. Y'all know. I've been shut up. So this is a snoot used in studio photography. So you put it on you put it on to the camera. I mean, not onto the camera. Jesus, I put people all the wrong information. You put it onto your strobe from here, and it controls the light. It takes the light and it sends it to such a fine point, and we all know that light spreads. Light automatically spreads. So it puts it at a fine point, and when it reaches the nozzle, it starts to spread back out, but not as much as it would have without this on. So I put this on the side. I'm gonna set a little bit of, and we're gonna move forward. Yeah. So I have the snoot here, and it's using the contrast of his skin tones versus his hair, and using the contrast of his skin tones versus the background. That creates such a nice image. So contrast in photography is one of the most important components. Knowing how to manipulate contrast will change your picture for the better. Contrast means difference. In photography, the most common differences are achieved by changing the tones or colors. Higher contrast will give your image a different feel than a lower contrast. The type of contrast can also influence your image. Contrast is a key element to convey certain moods through your images. High contrast photos pop out, show textures in the subject, and give a feeling of edginess, high energy, and strength. Now, I know I had quite a few contrasty images, so we're gonna go through those quickly. I'm gonna speak on each one. If you have any questions about the images as I go through them or how I achieved a certain look, feel free to chime in and ask. So yeah, this is the one I explained with Nakaz. Then we're gonna go into this with Rashad Rich. Again, this is a white background. The light is completely off of the background. Well, not that much, but it is not hitting the background directly. So you can tell by looking at the top right of the image where the light, you can tell that the light is more direct. So the top right is very dark versus the bottom left. The bottom left is a lot lighter. The contrast of his bright red hat really helps to show what he wants to convey. You know, you can't see his face. His face is completely in shadow. The front of his body is lit well, but the back of his body is dark. He has his fists in a ball to show strength, or to show focus, or determination. And those are type of stuff that you can get from playing with those different contrasts and shadows. This here is a self-portrait, which is probably one of my favorite self-portraits, but it is a very nice example of contrast and also dealing with shadows. Like I said earlier, when you use shadows and contrast correctly, you're able to get a very clear understanding of texture and what's going on with the image, or how the image is lit. You can manipulate it to the point where it is more than just a photo. It is literally art. So with this image, wasn't too difficult. I had a two light setup. I had gels on each light. I had a magenta on one, then I had a blue or whatever color you call them on the other one, and start right in the middle. And the trick is here, you don't want those two colors to blend instantly, or you don't want them to spread over each other. you want to create a separation. You want to create a separation with them. If you look at the image well, you can tell that you can see that the magenta is going across onto the other side, as well as the how the blues are going across onto the other side. So it's almost creating an X going straight across the image. Directly down the center, where the two contrasts or where the two colors meet, there is almost no separation. So you can see the colors in there correctly. So it'll go from that magenta or that red to the white that actually is the vape smoke that's coming out of my mouth, and right into the blues. So you still can see the texture and you can see the colors. So contrast and shadows in that one as well. Let me see if I have any other one. Okay, good. So we're gonna stop on.
I wanted to ask a question.
Go ahead.
What camera did you use to get that smoke to look like that?
Which camera did I use?
Like the lens or?
Okay, so this would have been, I don't think I had my new camera as yet, but this would have been a Canon camera. I think either the 6D or the 5D Mark III. So it is a very sharp image, and it's not necessarily the camera that makes the image look good. Those same three basic stuff I showed from the beginning, those are, you can play with those in any camera, and you can create like beautiful, sharp, very nice images. But I should have mentioned that. I have my camera here. Oh, my camera behind me. I gotta get up again. Let me show you on the camera. So this is the camera that I am currently using. This is a Canon EOS R. It's a mirrorless camera. I decided to switch to mirrorless because these are a lot lighter, especially dealing with weddings. The lens that is on it is a 24-105. Very nice lens. And I also use a 24-70 when I am shooting events late at night, because the aperture on it goes a lot lower. It lets more light in. So yeah, it ain't necessarily the camera that creates a very nice image, but it is how you use the settings. But I think this was either 60 or 5D Mark III. All right. So I'm going to go into the next part now. Pause this right here. Feel free to ask questions if you have them now, while I set up the portion.
Hey, Seven, I was asking in relation to Zoom backgrounds, if you had an opportunity to try it before. There's an option that you have to choose green screen. And once you have the green screen, I was asking, if you don't have a green screen, is there any substitute that will make sure that it's different from the person and the background blending? I don't know if you've tried it yet.
Sorry, I wasn't completely clear on it. I think you're asking, one more time for me?
Okay, so Zoom has an option for you to switch your backgrounds. So if you don't have a green screen, you can just insert a photo, but it looks very choppy. What from my research, I've seen that if you click the green screen option, that means you have to have a green screen, and then you also need proper lighting for you to pop from the background, and you not like be choppy in the background. So I was just wondering if you had any experience setting up anything like that online.
Okay, yeah. So the trick with green screen is when you have green screen, or when you want to use green screen, you want to create a separation. The reason they choose the color green is because that there's usually no skin tone that has green. People usually don't wear green, so it's very easy to separate. And if you light it correctly, and if you create that depth from the background, it's very easy to cut around and separate the subject from the background. Now for Zoom, I'm not sure how they do their green screen, but if it's anything like how the apps today use it, like TikTok, I don't know if you ever use the green screen thing on TikTok. They basically find your face, and then they artificially cut around it, or what they think is your body. They use some kind of futuristic technology that I know nothing about to find the edges of your body, and they separate it. But it will work better with green screen because of the contrast between the color green and the contrast of the person's body, if that helped. Got a smile there.
It did help. So substitutes, if you don't have a professional green screen, can you just get like green cloth, or what can be substituted?
So green cloth will work. Again, it is the color that counts. So I have green screen here. I don't know where my screen, but I use green screen.
With the color, and then also lighting tips for green screen at home.
Okay. All right. Let me just I can get a green screen one time and then run over that. Hold on. Oh, I need anything wrong. Okay, so this is the green screen that I have here. I have it folded. It's usually better ironed. But if you look at this, and it's probably not the best on the camera on my webcam, but if you look at this, it is a different green. You're not gonna find a green like this everywhere. So this is why they use it inside movies. They use this, or they use a type of blue, because there's people rarely wear anything with like this color green in it. So it creates a very nice contrast. So if you're looking at this now and say, I put my hand directly in front of this, like you can see my hand and all the edges around it, versus if I use this towel, it's gonna be, open it up a little bit more. It's gonna be difficult to see the edges because of the tones being so close together. And lighting for green screen. Put this to the side. So lighting for green screen. It is very important that you have enough space to separate the subject from the background. When that happens, you want to light your subject correctly, mind you. But when that happens, it blurs out the green. So all of the wrinkles and stuff that you could see in this, because this is up close, once this is blurred, it becomes one color. So it makes the software makes removing the green a lot easier. So you don't have those different shades of green or different patches of color. It'll just be one nice blended color. And for lighting, I would always say, if this is your subject, bring your lighting at least right here. You can see this. I don't know if this is great, but this is your subject. Bring your lighting either to the left or to the right or to both sides, or however you have it, here. But your background should at least be here. Straighten this up as much as possible. All right, so your background should at least be here. If this is your subject, then you want to bring your lights at least right here. So it lights them correctly without having to making the background too sharp. And that's why depth of field is so important. But you also want to light the green screen properly as well. So if you could put lights on your green screen, try and do that. All right, so that's good.
Thank you.
No problem. All right, cool. So we are going to go into poses now. Oh, there we go. Let me just slide this down like so. Well, like my cat rubbed up against me just now. All right, so we're going to go into posing now. So there are 5 key posing techniques. So posing is one of the most challenging aspects of photography. If you ask almost any photographer what is one skill they want to master, they're gonna say posing. It's very common for a photographer to be baffled when it comes to posing a model or a bride or groom. Usually it comes down to them saying, well, hey, let's try this. Or, oh, 1 second for me. Y'all know how these live things go. Stuff is happening. So yeah, it's very common for a photographer to be baffled when it comes to posing bride or groom. So where was I? Yes, so it usually comes down to the photographer saying, let's try this, or let's just see what happens. Then you can almost tell automatically when a photographer starts to panic. You know, they might burst out into sweat. All these mosquitoes. They might burst out into sweat. They might faint. You know, I've seen photographers faint and pass out because they don't know what they're doing. But for people, photographers, and even models, mastering posing is a vital skill. So we'll be looking at the 5 key posing techniques. By breaking down these techniques, it'll be easy to understand and it'll be a lot more fun. So like sweat as a fly, that's why you can open your door in the night. It'll be a lot of fun. You'll know exactly what you want, and you'll be able to describe your pose to your clients like a master. And they're gonna be like, oh, okay, cool. I appreciate you for telling me exactly what to do, and when to do it and how to do it. So, there we go.
I just wanted to share, if you don't mind. One time I was inside of a studio to get some photos done, you know, how the studio used to be back in the day where you could pull down the different backgrounds and choose a background to take a photo. And I remember being there and the photographer was taking a photo of me, and I remember looking at the photo and being like, but I look bad. It's like, so when you were talking about like how some photographers don't know how to make a person pose, I think that was the situation I went through that time.
Yeah. So it shows, like, we're not, just because somebody doesn't know how to take a photo doesn't mean that they don't know anything about photos. So a lot of photographers feel like, hey, it's okay for me to just wing it. And they try to stay away from mastering posing, or just try to stay away from posing on the whole, and just telling people, hey, do what you feel is natural, or look at the camera and smile, and then that's the only pose they have. But it is very, very important knowing how to pose, especially if you're posing for a client, whether that be a model, whether that be a bride or groom, whether that be for a headshot for corporate. Like, it's very important to know how to do it and how to relate an image. I don't know if y'all can hear my cat digging up the litter box in the back. That's what he's doing. So technique 1, systematically sculpting the body. So elegant posture is a key element in posing a person's body. If you look at posing as building a house, posture could be compared to the foundation of the structure. So it holds everything together. It has a lot to do with balancing the body's weight distribution. And we're going to talk about that in a second. So the spine must be straight as possible. This is usually overlooked by photographers. Many of the issues in posing can be fixed by simply saying or asking the model or the subject to straighten their spine. So this applies to men and women, whether they're sitting, standing, or laying down. So how I sit in here now, I don't know if you all could tell, but every so often, I would go into a slouch. But I try to keep my back as straight as possible. So it creates a better frame for not just my back in the future, but for you guys to see. So systematically sculpting the body. Let me see. So this right here is basically me just asking my model to straighten her spine. That's it. She coming out of the water. I did tell her to where to look or how to use her face. But it is a very natural shot. So she's coming out the water, and instead of slouching forward or coming out the water just regular, it's like, hey, when you come out the water, straighten your spine. It may feel uncomfortable, but it looks great. So you can tell that her spine goes directly vertical, and her shoulders are relaxed. I want to touch on weight distribution. So this is basically a straight spine, but weight distribution. So if you want to achieve natural looking poses, it's best to mimic what the body does naturally. All right, so it's best to mimic what the body does naturally. If you're waiting for someone for like 10 to 15 minutes, your body would naturally come to a more relaxed stance, and you would want to put more weight on one foot. You may find a wall to lean against, and your weight would constantly change. One knee may be bent, the next one may be straight. So people become nervous when a camera is pointed towards them. So they stand up straight, they get in their head, the arms tend to go straight down, and they become less confident. But if you could simply, like, you could, as the photographer, or even as the model, you could simply think about, okay, hey, how would I be if I'm more relaxed, taking into account, okay, keeping a straight spine. So this guy here has an extremely straight spine, but he is relaxed. So he has one knee bent, the next one straight. I think he's kind of leaning back, his hands in his pocket, and he's slightly tilted towards me. So it isn't your traditional, okay, hey, let me stand up straight and look towards the camera. No, yo, relax, get comfortable. So a few things you could ask their model to do is shift more weight to one foot, straighten the spine, and lower both shoulders to a relaxed position. Because people tend to get to tense up when they take in a picture. They feel like they need to be all the way up here. But no, relax the shoulders, straighten your spine, and boom, put more weight on one foot. It makes a whole lot of a difference, and it's very simple to ask the model or subject to do. A popular misconception as well is tilting versus slouching. So tilting your head forward is not slouching. If your spine is straight, it's very easy to say, okay, hey, I want to move my head forward this way, or I want to move my head to the side. And it's not so much, okay, let me slouch down here. So this is me slouching. So tilting and slouching is two different things. You can keep your back perfectly straight while tilting your head in any direction. A slouch is when your spine is curved. Boom. So we're gonna go into symmetrical posing, and we're still on technique one. Like I said, we have 5 of these, and we're still on technique one. So shifting the body weight, curving joints, hair tilting are great techniques to create relaxed portraits, to create strong and powerful poses. There's a trick. Imagine a vertical line running down the middle of your subject on both sides of a mirror. So I come back to this image because imagine a vertical line going straight down, and you want to balance out both sides. So next time you pose, try a few symmetrical poses. Even try posing from the back, or try posing from the front. Cool. So I think that'll be it. Let me see if I have any more here. Okay, no. So we're gonna move into technique 2, which is posing the hands, which is another struggle that most photographers have. So the question we hear most during any shoot is, where do I put my hands? Hand poses can make or break a great photo. Getting hand poses right can be tricky, but tough to communicate. Jeez, my tongue all time. Here we go. So one thing you'd want to do is give the hand something to do or touch. The fastest way to get a subject comfortable is to give them something to do with the hands. Giving the hand something to do isn't the only option. You could give them something to touch, ask them to place their hands against something specific. It's easy, like it's an easy starting point when posing the hands. So just be like, hey, either rest your hand to your side or put one hand in the other hand. Like, you know, it makes it look a lot more comfortable. Avoid foreshortening. Now, for anybody who doesn't know, foreshortening is when you have your hand pointing towards the camera, and if you can see that my limbs, the fingers, look a lot shorter versus than if I had it completely down. So it will work in some images, but it isn't very appealing all the time. So avoid foreshortening. Don't hide or crop the entire hand. This is another one of my favorite images. Hands can add beauty and personality to an image. Why leave them out of the photo? So while obscuring part of the hand is fine. See, I lost my place. Anyway, while obscuring part of the hand is fine, avoid hiding everything from the wrist down. So you want to try and keep the hands in the frame. And if you do cut them out, either you want to cut them completely out. So if you look at her right arm or at the left of the screen, you'll see that her arm is there, but it's not in the photo. Her left arm is bent slightly out of the photo, but it pulls right back up. So you can tell that, okay, that arm goes here and it comes right back up. So avoid, don't hide or crop the entire hand unless you completely take it out. And there should be another one. All right, so don't place hands much closer to the camera. Hands tend to look a lot larger if you bring them a lot closer. Like, look at this, jeez. So hands tend to look a lot larger when you bring them closer to the camera. And the same applies when you shooting models and dealing with different clients and stuff like that. If you bring their hands closer, their hand's gonna look larger, their head gonna look tiny, they're gonna look like a backwards T-Rex. So I think that's pretty much self-explanatory. And I am pushing through these just a little bit quicker because I noticed the time, and I don't want it to extend too long. So watch out for tense hand poses. So how do you spot tense hands? They're flat, they're tight, curled into a fist. For tense, flat hands, ask the subject to relax their hand or curve their hands just a little bit. Like if somebody has their hand like this, like you can tell that, okay, hey, this is tense. You can see all of the vein and stuff inside their hand. But if you ask them to relax it just a little bit, like it'll almost come to a nice little curve. It'll be more appealing. Same deal if the hand is upside down. You don't want it to be too tense, where it's flat, or you don't want it to be curved or strong into a fist unless you are going for that look in the image. Right. Okay. So I think that's with that. I think that's with that, and that is that. If any questions there, we can ask. I'm going to go into posing the face next.
Okay, I have a question. I want to find out in that image, do you consider her hand tense or not? The one that's on his chest.
Right. So I would say that her hand is a bit tense. I did ask her to relax her hand some more, but it is tense because she is literally like using that hand to support herself onto him. And I think she was focused just a bit more on facial expression. But I do think that hand it could have been a lot more relaxed. Awesome. All right. So we're gonna go into posing the face as well. So this is more about posing the actual face and not the expression. So keep in mind that the neck, the contrast, there will be contrast between the face and the neck. If there is no contrast, the neck will bend into the face, giving it one massive, making it appear as one massive skin, and it won't be flattering. So to achieve contrast, you could try these two things, like dealing with lighting, making the face brighter than the neck, the depth of field, focusing on the eyes and choosing a more shallow aperture to blur the neck, changing the angle of the chin by moving the hair to the left or to the right there. So part of the chin is on a different background. Avoid shooting from an angle lower than the chin. And like even for this, like I try to photograph just a few inches above the eyes. It's always good to try and stay in frame of the eyes, but I try to shoot slightly above the eyes. So with this image, you can tell that, okay, your attention goes straight to her face, straight to her eyes. It's not, her neck isn't completely down, but it also has a lot to do with the lighting. I'm trying to remember if I am in the water or not, but anyway, so I ain't too far from her. I shot this on my 70 to 200. So there is a nice depth of field. So if you look directly, like right behind her off her shoulder, you can see that the image starts to blur. Like it doesn't go far before it starts to blur. And there's light in her eye. There's the strobe is in the water and it's hitting her directly, but it's balanced properly where it creates a nice shadow underneath the chin to separate the face from the neck. So yeah, so just take those few things into account, and boom, you'll be good. So moving on to technique for balancing expressions and energies. Yeah, expressions and balancing energies. People don't react to someone they don't respect. Most clients can sense fear from a mile away. So you will only gain their respect once they see confidence and assertiveness in your eyes. This comes with practice. For practicing posing, you know what to anticipate. When you pose a couple in a certain way, you know what looks good and what doesn't. Removing much of the guesswork. Try being direct and specific about what you say. Say things like, I need a lot of movement, or give me a small smile, or look straight into the camera. You know, people can follow instructions like that without feeling patronized. So simply for this, usually what I've noticed between shooting foreign clients and Bahamian clients, the foreign clients are more open to poses where, okay, hey, I'm with my boys, I'm with my groomsmen. They surrounded by all of the bridesmaids, and they showing off the ring. Now, it would never hurt to go and ask. It's like, hey, I know this will make a nice image. You know, show off the ring. Tell everybody to what kind of expression to give off, or just pretend that they're excited. You know, just make them feel the energy that you want them to convey through your energy, and like through very, very simple and easy instructions. Just let people know, hey, this is what I want you to do, and try to relay it through your energy. Let's go into eyes. So I show everybody at one time or another, take a photo, and then they zoom in, and then, you know, you look at the eyes and the subject just ain't into it. They might have an amazing body posture, but something about the face or something about the eyes are off. The hands and the eyes say a lot about a person's expression more than anything else. So when people are being posed, most photographers don't tell the couple what to do with the eyes. So to avoid the issue, give the subject give the subject exact directions on where to look or what you want them to do. When you pose the eyes, you meet two objectives. you give the subject something to look at, and it changes how open or how closed the eyelids are gonna be. So if you pose the eyes correctly and the expression on your subject's face can appear candid, natural, and believable. Simple as this. I know I want her to look over her shoulder, but I didn't want her to look directly over her shoulder at me. So I was like, hey, this is where my strobe is. I want you to not to look directly into my strobe, but slightly past my strobe on my side. So she did that, and she had the little gap in her mouth, which was, okay, on fire, let me take it. And it really is a nice image. The wind was blowing the correct direction. So it really pushed her hair back to get it away from her face. And it really hit on the eyes, because the blue in the background, the blue in the water, the blue in her dress, it accents or the eye, like it accents with the eye, which is really good for any photo. So pay attention to the eyes as well. And finally, give specific direction. And that's basically what it says. You know, you want to be sure, you want to be clear when you're telling your clients what to do and how to do it. So you don't want to seem like a tyrant. You don't want to seem like a bad person. But at the same time, you want them to get the point, and you want them you just want to be confident when you're telling your clients what to do. So that's it for that. I am going to do the posing. I'm going to go through the posing chart next, and this is going to be very quick, and then we may wrap up after that, but I'll open it up to some questions. So we'll go through the posing chart quickly. If anybody have any questions on the techniques, feel free to ask now.
I have a question. What do you do in the case of children, getting them to pose naturally, use their hands?
So with children, it is a little bit more tricky. So I find that when the kids are more comfortable with me, they tend to listen more. So sometimes children can be, depending on their age, they're not interested at all, and they're gonna do what they want to do. So you can't keep them still or anything like that. So if I am shooting a kid, I try to get there just a little bit earlier, so it's not like I just show up and, okay, I take in your pictures and I go on. No, I try to get there just a little bit earlier. I make small talk. So it's like, hey, what's your name? How old you is? And, you know, give them props, make them feel good. Give them, like, balance that energy and share that with them. You know, and when they feel like, okay, hey, this person is cool, or this person is friendly, they tend to listen a bit more. And once you have a child listening, it's a lot easier to give those directions. It's a lot easier to get them to do certain things. So I think that's how I work with kids. I just, if I can, I try to talk to them before I point my camera at them, you know, so they could have a better feeling.
Thank you.
No problem. All right. So now we are going to go into, I didn't even pull the thing up. Here. Okay. All right. We are going to go into poses, and this is where you guys are going to see all of the pictures and stuff. I've been taking, I found for you. So you can see it now, the posing chart. If you take this chart and you go on any shoot, whether you're taking 10 photos, whether you're taking 20 photos, you're gonna want to apply these, or try to use some form of these in order to achieve like very nice images, taking into account the eyes, taking into account the hands and the spine, you know, dealing with the face and stuff like that. So we're going to go through this real quickly, and you have quite a few. So you have traditional. And these are more so for couples or weddings. because I find that's where people struggle the most, couples and weddings. So you have the traditional, you have him behind her, you have her behind him, walking, kissing, playful. You have holding hands, sitting together side by side, interpretive, distance apart, hugging, foreground and background, facing each other, a kiss anticipation, featuring him, featuring her, and the T-pose. So I'm gonna go through all of them so you can have an idea of what these images is, and I'm sure a lot of you would have used them as well. So first things first, get on the screen as well. The traditional is basically, okay, hey, we're gonna stand right there. You guys look towards me. It's almost it's a safety image. If all goes downhill and all of the images, there's something wrong with them, or they don't like any of the images, you're gonna have at least this one where they say, okay, hey, this is us standing up. And I usually start with this because you never really know what could happen. Like it might rain where you only get to take a few photos, and you don't want to start off doing like backflips in the sand, and you don't have an image of them standing together. So I usually start with the traditional, which is basically them two just standing, looking towards me for the camera. Boom. And you have him behind her, which is, you can ask her to, hey, can you rest your back onto your groom or onto whoever? Can you rest your back onto him? And then you start to play around with, okay, hey, this is what to do with the hands. Again, I'm not using perfect images, but like with her arm here, I don't like the 90-degree angle that's in her arm. I would have asked him to, well, I should have asked him to bring his arm down a little bit more so her arm can fall just can have a slight bend in it. But yeah, him behind her, you can ask them to look at each other. You can have her look towards the camera and him look at her. Just different poses in there. And you have her behind him. Whereas he's still doing the more comfortable pose. His hands are in his pocket. He's looking right towards the camera. And she's focused more on him. That's another pose there. Then you have the walking. And there are two types of walking. This one is more of a candid walking, where it's more natural. It flows a lot better than sometimes asking them to, hey, I need you guys to hold hand and walk. But this was them walking up the aisle, because you all know the sun is the aisle. The foreigners come and they just want to take pictures. They would dress in suit and take pictures in the sun. But that's neither here nor there. So they were walking up the aisle, and you can see that there is not much of a connection here, because they're not holding hands, they're not looking at each other. But it is still a walking shot. So you have this type of walking, and then you have this type of walking, where you give them specific instructions. You let them know, hey, hold hands for me. Either you can place the groom on which side, or you can place the male on which side you want him on. Place the female. You can have them looking towards each other. You can have him leading. You can have her leading. Like different stuff like that. Just creates different poses. But walking is a big part of it. Kissing. When people think kissing, they think, oh, okay, y'all mash your face together. Nah. No. So kissing can be either a kiss on the lips, it can be a kiss on the cheek, it can be a kiss on the hands even. So once you have them fixed, it is very nice to go into that. Okay, hey, I want you guys to kiss for me. And if you notice, there's kiss anticipation that we're gonna touch on just a little bit later. But this is lip to cheek or lip to lip actual kissing, which creates another pose. And you see on the left, it's incorporated with the T pose, which we'll touch on later as well. but on the right, it is the him behind her pose. So that's another way you can use that. Playful action movement. This is giving them, this is saying to them, okay, hey, what do you guys feel like doing? Or, throw your hands up, do something fun, get silly. But again, at the same time, you have to relay that energy properly. So they have to feel your energy. Whether you make them laugh or whether you make them smile, they have to feel that energy. And once you give that energy off, they're gonna relate that energy and you're gonna capture that energy with your camera. So this is playful action movement. Now I think I had her holding her bouquet up for a photo previously. And then I was like, okay, boom, now I want y'all to do this or just have fun or something like that. And it was very quick, but she kept it up. Ooh, holding hands. Very simple. And if you guys can see that I'm using balance in this as well. So I'm balancing the negative space. So it's not pulling your attention directly there, but you know that it's there because there is a nice sunset going on. She is wearing white, he's wearing white, and then this part of the frame that is not taking up anything, it is also white. So you can see the balance there. So you have white, white, and white. So it works very nice. But it is holding hands, and this is also distance apart. They're not using expressions on their face because you don't have to always tell a client to smile. You don't have to tell them, okay, hey, this is what I want y'all to do. Sometimes a great image comes out just by saying, hey, hold hands and look at each other. Sometimes they look at each other long enough and nothing happens. Sometimes they look at each other long enough and both of them burst out in laughter. But they was looking at each other. So it is a very nice mood image, because you can tell that there's passion there. Sitting. Same deal again with the contrast, with the white on the darker colors or the skin tones on the darker sky in the background, with the sun breaking through the clouds. You have the beach there, and they're not so much interested in me. They're sitting and they're looking at each other. Then we're gonna go in together, side by side. This is another great pose that you can do. And another thing to point out in this is the parallel lines. If you look at on the right, you have the hallway leading, showing leading lines into the bride and the groom. The windows on the left, leading lines into the bride and groom. They meet inside the middle. It is a nice balance of the image. I think it's very intimate and it's very okay. The photographer isn't here. Interpretive. It's basically kind of tough to explain, but it's not so much a pose as much as it is a moment. So there might be something going on where the bride was in the room putting on her tiara, and for me this was like, okay, hey, this is a great moment. She's going to become somebody's queen. So use the image, run there quick, snap, snap, snap. Focus her inside the mirror. If I need to ask her to stay inside the mirror, I'll do that. It tells a story, basically, for interpretive. There's also another one. This is an actual pose where I ask them to do something specific, and it is interpretive and symbolic. So she's putting on his ring, he's putting on her ring. She's not looking at him putting on her ring, but she's looking at herself putting on his ring. And the same deal for him. So if you get to see his face, if I didn't crop his face out, you would be able to see that he was looking in that direction. But I think that the embrace that they have, even like this is even a bit of hugging. The embrace that they have is very symbolic, and it says a lot. Distance apart. Usually with couples or weddings, they plan to be together for the rest of their life. So you don't have to take every photo of them standing side by side. They don't have to be sitting down together. They ain't got to be one on the next one's shoulder. Create some distance between them. You can put her, like with my bride here, I moved her back to the edge of the wall. I had him come closer to the camera, and I had him look back towards her. So you will see him, but you're gonna pay attention to what he's looking at. She's looking directly at him. She has a nice smile on her face, even though the sun hitting her. She have a nice smile on her face. And there's one thing I wanted to touch on that I won't be able to touch on, but reflections. Reflections are important as well. She has a nice reflection, nice and clear. There's nothing I could do about the beach in the background, but the image is the distance between them, which is great there. Hugging again, you have two different types of hugging. Well, you have a few different types of hugging, but you have the traditional hug, which you'll see on the right, and then you have a more staged hug, which you're seeing on the left. Now, it's not fully staged to the point where, okay, hey, this guy's name is Nick, and it was a surprise engagement. And he bring her there, and he proposed to her, and she was ecstatic, and they were hugging. And at this moment, you know, it's a real moment. But Nick knew that I was here, but I don't think she noticed that I was there as yet. So I just asked Nick to show me the box while she embraces him. You don't have to see her face in order to get her emotion. Like you can almost feel it in the image. So that's the image on the left. Image on the right is more of a traditional hug where it is, hey, I want you guys to embrace. Ignore me for a moment. You know, I usually ask the males to whisper something in her ass. You know, tell her something. Don't like, I don't ask them to tell her anything funny or anything specific. I just like tell her something. He knows what makes her laugh. He knows how to make her blush. You know, he knows how to get that moment. So he's doing that now, and I'm just capturing the moment and making sure it's symmetrical and balanced and stuff like that. Foreground, background. Y'all, we almost there. We almost at the end of this. But foreground, background. This could be mistaken for, you know, featuring him or featuring her, but this is when you have an object almost obscured in the front, showing an object in the back. Now it could be where you have the groom standing directly in the front of your camera. So let's say if the groom is standing here and this was blurred, and then the bride was back here. So he would be completely blurred. She would be the focus. Either or, it would work with both of them. You can do it with a kiss, like what's going on here. You see the bridal party in the back, so it's more so featuring them. You see the bridal party in the back, and you know, okay, hey, everybody's happy, everybody's watching. It's a great creative photo. Foreground, background. Facing each other, very simple, very straightforward. Hey, you stand here, you'll look at each other, and then, you know, you get into the groove of telling them what to do with their faces, with their hands and stuff like that. You know, and relaxing their body. The kiss anticipation. Now, I've gone through a few images trying to find a great image to show off the kiss anticipation, but this is close, but I want to explain it. So if you ever see inside those love movies where you have the couple and they'll be so close, like they'll be right here to each other before it starts raining and everybody breaks out into tears, you know, that is a kiss anticipation. You create that moment, and you hold that. So it's a lot different from actually kissing. It's a lot different from actually kissing, and it creates a mood. It creates a barrier between you and them, where it's almost like they're all about each other. They're all into each other right then and right there. Don't look at me. Just focus on that. And I usually make them hold it for a while. So it's really soft lips, and you bring their faces, or you bring their lips as close as possible, where you can see it without actually touching. So it's like right there. That was the background, but it's like right there where they're looking at each other. I just wish I had a better image to show. I could not find one, even though I know I have. Featuring him, featuring her. So this would be more of the couple where you wanna pull more attention to one of them. So it could be done either way, where you have her in the foreground, you have him in the background, and then you have him in focus with her out of focus. Or you have her in the foreground, him in the background, and you have him out of focus with her in focus. Or you could switch them up. So you take one image with her in the foreground in focus, and then you bring him forward, put him in the foreground in focus. So it's two ways you can do that. And then finally, I want to touch on the T pose, which is a very common but not known about style of posing. So basically, you will have your couple start with their collarbones facing towards each other. So if you guys are the camera, I'll be standing here, and say she's standing here. We're going to be facing towards each other, and then one person is going to turn out and create a T with either shoulder blades. So you'll see it works. It works here, where you can incorporate all of the other styles of posing. You can do a kiss anticipation with this. You can have them looking at each other. You can have them with both of their eyes closed and just embracing the moment. This can be done sitting. It can be it can be done hugging. So him behind her or her behind him. There's a lot of ways you can do this, and a lot of photographers do it, but they're not entirely sure of what they are doing. And I think that would be the last one for poses. So that was a mouthful, and I've gone through them as quickly as possible. So if you have any questions now, feel free to ask about the posing. Oh. All right, so I don't see much about.
Just want to say it's great so far.
Thank you. Okay. All right, and let me see. Okay, so this is where I think I should pause for a moment. So we went over the basics. We went over dealing with locations. We went over posing and the 5 key posing techniques, and we went over the posing chart. Now, if I still have another section to do, but I want to open up to Q&A to find out what you guys like, any questions that you may have, and if you feel that you should be doing anything else, or even if you just have questions that you want to ask me, I want to open that up now so you guys can speak. No? Yep. Okay. Okay, cool. So the second part of this, Steph, you still there?
Yeah, I do have a question from Facebook.
Okay.
What do you do with a client who insists on a pose that they've seen and it doesn't suit them? How do you deal with that client? As some persons would come with poses they've seen on someone else, a thinner person, and they're fluffy.
Okay, that is a great question. So when a client hires me, um, I feel like they hire me because they trust me, because they like my images or they love my images. If a client comes to me and say, okay, hey, I want hubby to lift me up and put me in the dirty dancing pose and hold me over here, but she knows it may not work. If it's a situation that intense, I would let her know straight up, and I would be straightforward with her. Hey, this is not the best idea, at least for what we want to accomplish. Now, if husband's strong enough to do it, and this is in the cases. This is in the case of if she is fluffy. If the husband's strong enough to do it, then yes. If she's slim enough to be hoisted in the air, then yes. If I don't see it going well, I don't want nobody telling telling people that, oh, the photographer tell me do this. No, I will advise against it if I feel it's in everyone's best interest. But if it's a case like where they see an image and they bring an image to me and they say, okay, hey, I want to do this. I take a careful look at the image and I think about my skill level. So they might bring a pose from friggin' Victoria's Secret or Sports Illustrated or something like that, where it takes a lot of lighting, it takes a lot of knowing how to creating depth of field. And if I don't have the knowledge or the know-how to do it, and I attempt it, it's gonna look bad. The client's gonna say, okay, hey, they're seeing what I wanted. So I let my clients know straight up, hey, I can do this or I can't do this. And that's if they bring a pose. So usually it's yeah. Usually I will try it if it seems possible, or if I need to just take a moment to say, okay, hey, let me look at it real quick. If it is possible, I will give it a shot. That's how we learn as creatives. We try. But if it's not possible, or if I don't see it happening, or I don't see myself getting the results that they wanted, I will let them know that, hey, I don't think this is a good idea, or I don't want to say I don't feel comfortable producing this image, but essentially around that. But usually it's me willing to give it a try, but that's because of my skill level. I hope that answers your question from Facebook.
All right. Any other questions for Seven?
What are your social media handles, or how can we find you?
Okay, so on social media, the business is Think Studios. That's THINQ Studios, and same thing on Facebook. And you can type in Seven Thomas on Facebook as well, and that'll bring you to my page. But Think Studios basically everywhere. So Steph, I wanted to. You said there was not anything else tonight.
No.
Okay, so for everybody who's listening now, that was part one. So there is a separate part of this that I had planned to do, and this would be more based on editing. So that first part was just the basics and posing, but there is a second part about editing. Now, it's kind of late, and I don't wanna go into nobody else's time or anything like that, if you allotted a certain amount of time to this. Now, if you guys would be interested in that, either tonight or on another night, I would say let me know. That way I can, get it done. So just putting that out there, because I think it's a good time to start now.
I would say for those of you that can stay, you feel free to stay. If you can't, we appreciate it. But you can continue if you wish.
Okay. Now, this is going to be a little bit more intense, a little bit more in-depth. So what I am going to do is I'm going to go over my basic style of editing. And you guys are going to give me one quick second to put everything in place. I'm going to take this camera back over there. Okay. Set up, and I want to set up the screen. And I'll try and make this as quick as possible, because I think 10 o'clock is like good time for me to try and go to sleep. But while I'm doing this, anybody would need to ask anything about editing or anything that they'd like to know about editing while I go here?
I see we have a Daskway. He says, "Is 7 your real name?"
Yes, it is. And I am the seventh child of the seventh generation. I don't know if none of that's true, but yeah, I have 7. All right, so let me set up. I want to set up Photoshop over on this
While
side.
you're setting up that, have you ever dealt with any bridezillas during your time of photography?
Bridezillas, yes, I have. The thing is with dealing with a bridezilla. All of it. Just that. The thing is, when you deal with a bridezilla, it's not easy. So what you want to do is I try to be as professional as possible. I don't let my feelings of what she said or how she say something get in the way of me doing my job. So if she going off and she angry about something, it may not even be about the photography. If she's going off and she's angry about something, I'm gonna continue to do my job. I still gonna talk to her the way I would talk to a regular client, but more professional. So yeah, bridezillas, there's come, they tear up the place, but at the end of the day, you're still on the job. So you still have to keep that level of professionalism. See what I'm saying? See what I'm saying now? I hope that answered that question.
I have a question. How do you increase the resolution on a photo and increase the DPI on a photo?
So usually when you take a photo, I put my camera off again. But when you take a photo, the photo is usually extremely large. So you wouldn't need to increase it as much as bring it down. What I think you're referring to is when you get in, like if you download an image or anything like that.
Right, like I want to use the image to print. Like let's say to print an image on t-shirts or something like that, and it needs the image to be larger.
This is an image that you took, or just an image that you found?
An image I took.
Okay, so the easiest way to do that is when you take an image. I usually save all of my images raw, versus JPEG. When you save an image raw, it has a larger file. If you size that image down, I think the resolution for computers are 72 ppi. So they tend to be only good enough for the resolution of screens. But if you take them off, 72 ppi isn't much, but you want to create that you wanna have that go into prints. So okay, hold on. Let me share the screen over on the side so I can give a better example. So this is the image. This is the image we're going to be working with. I'm going to do a quick retouch on that. But oops, I'm on the wrong side. All right. So here we go. Have to do it on the side. Cool. So I'm going to create a box.
Tell us what program you're using.
Oh, this is Adobe Photoshop. I've been using Photoshop for as long as I can remember. So in order, you would need a bit of know-how in Photoshop in order to properly edit and create visually appealing images. So this is, let's say this is the box that I'm creating. And right now, we go to File, or we go to Image, and we go to the canvas size, which is everything over on the wrong side of the screen. And you go to the canvas size. We can switch this over to inches. Say it's in 11 by a regular size piece of paper. And this is what you're seeing. Once I probably should do like a circle or something. Squares are just square. There you go. And I'm gonna fill this with black. Okay, decent like that. This is what you're referring to when you say you want the image to be sharper. It starts to get pixelated. So usually on computers, the image resolution would be 72 pixels per inch. Now let me see if I could find canvas size, image size. Right. So this one is at 300, but they are usually 72 pixels per inch, which tends to make the image just a lot smaller. And it makes everything more pixelated. So if you look at this now versus what I had before, it's a lot more pixelated, and I can't even zoom in as much as it was when it was at 300. So there's no real way to make an image a lot sharper if you're taking it from offline. But if you took the image will be sharp as possible, and you can zoom in like how I'm in on this image. You can zoom in and get extremely nice detail. But yeah, it is very tricky. I want to see if I can. So you guys saw how I zoomed in right there. Let me see if I can change the resolution on this, the image size on this. I'm gonna put this up. So this is directly on the camera. You can see this is. I'm gonna move it to inches. 14 inches by 22 inches. And if I take this to 72, which is usually the resolution for computer screens, it's going to be a lot smaller, and I won't have as much detail when I zoom in versus what it is now, and this is at actual size of the detail when I'm in here now. But it is a lot. It's tricky, but it's no real easy way to do it, basically. All right. Okay, so what I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna go over retouching and trying to get quality skin, quality like magazine type skin, like an image that you will see in a magazine. So normally when I start, I will start with a with my image directly on the background. And I don't like to affect or work directly on my image. So I usually duplicate it and create another image so I can see, okay, this is the progress, or this is how it looks. When I get started, I try to deal with the skin first. No, sorry. When I get started, I deal with the camera raw. And this is another application directly in Photoshop, which allows you, if I go on the right screen, which allows you to adjust the shadows and the tones and the white balance and the temperatures and stuff like that. So you guys can see from here, the tone that is here now, like everything looks decent with the photo, but it may be just a little bit warm around certain edges. I'm gonna cool it down just a little bit. And then the tint, I may move the tint over just a tad bit. If the exposure is off, I think the exposure in this is fairly nice. If the exposure is off, you'd want to either darken it or lighten it. But I think the exposure is nice. I may bring it up just a little bit. Contrast, I'm going to bump the contrast just a tad. Highlights, I'm going to bring the highlights down. Now, if you take any of these to the extreme, you're going to see what it does. So mainly on the face and on the shirt here, this is contrast all the way up. This is contrast all the way down. So it like removes a lot of the whites from the face or from the shirt. That's the highlights. I think it looks good, maybe at about -10. And then the shadows, same deal. I don't usually take my shadows down. I will take my shadows up because I like the look that a shadow gives when it's done correctly. Same deal. Whites are similar to highlights. It's basically how bright you can make the image. You know where it starts to peak. You can take that. Blacks are similar to shadows, but these are for the strong, like anything is in the image that's just strictly black. I tend to crush my blacks just a little bit, and you have a lot of settings here that I wouldn't necessarily go into, or I don't need to go into. But basically, right on this first page right here, you have all of the main stuff where you can set your white balance, the temperature, your exposure, shadows, and anything of the sort. But quickly going through these, you'll have your tones, how much detail you want, split toning, lens correction, which comes in handy if you're shooting with extremely wide lens and your image starts to warp. Yeah, effects and calibration, all this technical stuff that is put in there to charge you more money. And then your presets. I have a few presets that I tend to use, or if I say shoot something outside and all of the images are the same, I'll drop a preset on it. If I shoot somebody light skin, it'll work better for them. But in here, it's, it is what you feel like it should be. If you're looking at it before and after of this, I don't know if you guys can see it exactly, but there is a slight difference in contrast, a slight difference with the tone of her skin and the color of the background, and just different tones. So that's how I usually would start. I hope I saved it this now. Well, I don't know. When I save it. But we're gonna go into what I do next. Is I tend to get my patch tool and I will begin to remove any blemishes around the skin. So the patch tool is great, especially if you have a really nice image. You can go into detail onto the skin, and you can, let's say, let me try to explain what the patch tool does. So every image is pixels. If you zoom in all the way into this, you're gonna see, and zoom in even more than this, you're gonna see it breaks down into different pixels. every image is just a bunch of different whole colors. Like you can see each one of these blocks is a whole color. It's just a different whole color. And that's what the pixels are. Let me see if I could go right onto the eye. So you can see when the colors start to separate.
Seven, Anisha wants to know, do you use cloning or healing, or is patching just your preference?
So I use cloning as well, but I don't clone if I am using the, okay. If I'm using the patch tool, I can use the clone tool as well. But I tend to stay away from the clone tool if I'm using frequency separation. So all in all, they do go hand in hand. But for my style of editing, I may be using both, or I may be only using one. Let me say hi.
She's
So,
right here in the class.
sorry?
She's in the class.
Oh, okay, great, beautiful. Hey, Annie, what do you do? So with this here, I'm going back into the pixels. Every image that a photographer takes is just a bunch of pixels placed together. The pixels are solid colors, but the more pixels there are, the more it looks like something. Just different colors placed in different spots to create an image. And once you understand the pixels or how the pixels work, it's a lot easier to manipulate the image. So I am going to quickly go over the patch tool and what the patch tool does. It takes a group of pixels and replaces that group of pixels with another group of pixels. So let's say she has a blemish right here on her cheek. I'm gonna take this blemish and I'm gonna move this piece of the cheek into that piece of the cheek where there isn't a blemish. And if you look closely, you can see that, okay, hey, there was a blemish there, now the blemish is gone. But not necessarily, it isn't gone, it just replaced, the pixels are just replaced with the other part of or with another pixel, or pixels. So for those of you who are into retouching and you want to know what I edit with, this is my tablet, and this is what I'm using now. It's kind of big, so you can tell by the size of my hand that I have big hands. I think this is about maybe 20 inches or something like that. But it's a huge tablet. I can't use a mouse. I don't know how to use a mouse. It comes with a pen, and it's basically me writing onto this tablet, and it gives me complete control of which points I use and where I place everything. So this is what I use. It's a Humion graphic tablet. Okay, so
roughly the price.
The price? Jesus, how much I paid for this? I think maybe it was a little under $100 or around $100. So roughly. Now I had a few of these. I had more, but they were never this size. They would usually be a lot smaller. But I needed more control over my arm because I just want to throw my arm everywhere when I edited. So I think one of the next one was here somewhere. I wish I had it so I can show you. But yeah.
So you find that more easier to work with than the mouse?
Yeah, extremely. Because if you think about it, and I gotta say this while I edit it so y'all can watch the screen as well. If you think about it, it's easier for humans to use a pen than it is for them to, do other stuff with their hands. So it is literally just like a pen, and just as easy as writing, it would be for me to draw a circle and use a point to drag over. So if you guys can see how quickly I am creating the circle, it's usually not that easy usually not that easy with a mouse. And I stopped using a mouse a long time. And you put a mouse in my hand, I don't even know what to do with it. I don't even know
Makes
where
sense. Makes sense.
yeah, I don't even know where to circle. I don't even know where my points are. Like, but it's a lot easier. But if you see what I'm doing, I'm taking the pixels, and I won't go into much detail. Like I would usually go into more detail, defining which pixels I want to move. I would be closer into the skin, like little stuff like this. I would pay attention to and remove, but I won't do it. I won't do it for the image because it tends to take a lot of time. So I'm just gonna take the major pixels or the major blemishes and remove them out of the way. So like this one here, so little bump on the head, and there's something going on there, there's something there. And I will show you guys a before and after of removing the minor pixels. And it also is a oops, all right. It also is a trained eye. It's not easy to see. Like some people might be looking at this like, hey, what's this way doing? All he doing is sliding his mouse across the screen and you know and changing with the image. But that's the thing about photography, especially editing. When you start to when you really get into an image and you pay attention to all of the pixels and all of the stuff, you can see what's going on almost before anybody else. So I'm just going to do a quick before and after of this image right here. So,
Hi, Seven.
hey.
I got a tiny little question.
Go ahead.
I'm not really trying to test you or anything, but I do have a legit question. That asked about the cloning or healing tool. I know you're using the patching tool, right?
Mm-hmm.
But a lot of what I learned is from YouTube, obviously. So I've learned how to do frequency separation and also cloning and healing as well. So with your pad, I noticed that it would be easier for you to use your pad and your pen for the patching tool. I personally don't see a difference with using the patching and the cloning. And cloning would be easier to use with a mouse as opposed to the pen with patching.
Right. Okay. Yes.
So that's why I wanted you to clarify, like, what's the difference between patching and cloning, so I could know if I need to go get a tablet myself to use to edit now.
So how I look at it, and I say I don't use the mouse. It is somewhat of a preference, but I still do believe that the pen is a lot easier, because even when you're saying cloning, or you're saying the healing brush tool. So this is the healing brush. The healing versus patches, or patching, or the patch versus cloning.
Patch versus cloning for now, yeah.
Okay, so this is the patch tool, and as I was saying earlier, it really moves more so a pixel. So let's focus on this young lady I all up in her face, but let's focus on this one right here. So I can take this, and I can remove this, and I can replace it with that right there. I can deselect that, and if I decide to put it back, you can see that, okay, hey, that's gone. I was able to be a lot more specific with how I circle it and how I moved it. So with the cloning stamp, I can put that same one right back. With the, I'm gonna save, oh, I save an image, hold on, I press it right now. Okay, gotta go and save it. Okay, so with the cloning stamp, when I take this image, I'm going to deselect that, and let's say I want to take a part of from right here. This is me selecting the image. When you see that change, if anybody doesn't know, this is me selecting. Okay, I want to take this and I want to put this here. So I would have to move this, select there, and then come back over here and brush over that spot. Let me make sure my opacity is kind of, because how I used to clone stuff. But it's taking this spot. So you will see where the little plus sign is. It's taking that spot and putting it there, which isn't bad, and it's very similar. But when you're using it on larger areas, I'm going to drop my opacity to about 70.
I guess it wouldn't blend as well as
right.
getting
Right. So if I take I want to move this spot here, and I'm using an area from here. I take that, and I'm going to do that. But if I continue to go, you can see the difference in the skin, right?
Mm-hmm.
How that little area around the skin is turning into that brighter spot, and you don't like. I don't like that because it's just taking the skin and placing it elsewhere as a whole. I'm gonna give a brighter example for those guys. So if I'm patching, say this was a skin, patching that, and I using it to fill in her cheek, you can see that this is what the cones are doing. It's literally just taking what's up there and putting it down. So with the patch tool, and
you have to specifically select that area.
right. So I'm not going to do it now. I don't remember which one is the patch tool. Say I wanted to remove. Oh, so say I want to take this. If I wanted to put the eye there, I can drag this and I can place it there like that.
Mm-hmm.
But automatically it'll blur, and it'll just blend in just a little bit better around the edges. Right. So, but it's still basically the same thing. But I do use the clone stamp tool just a little bit different, and you're gonna see how I use it shortly. But I hope that helped clear up something.
Thank you.
No problem. Got you. All right. So yeah. So we were dealing with the blemishes on the skin. So you might look at it and say, okay, hey, he ain't really do nothing here. But if I remove the before, you can clearly see that, okay, hey, I don't even know when he going in there and he take these blemishes off. The skin is a lot smoother. There's not that much blemishes or interruptions inside the skin. And the patch tool works great in that sense because it's more precise, and I feel like it's just a little bit faster than having to paint over the area. So I can just take a spot and I can replace it. Same deal with the lips. If she has lines in the lips that I don't wanna keep there. Let's say I wanna remove this line here. I can take this. This blend might not be the best, but I can take this and I can replace it somewhere else. Let me see if there's a before and after. Right, so you can see it's a lot easier than actually just going over it, and it's a lot faster, and that's with the help of the pen. So that line is gone. Let me put it back because that's her line. Okay, there you go. All right. So yeah, so that's how I start a retouch on the skin. Next, I will be remiss if I don't tell you all about actions. Actions are amazing. They help your process go so much faster, and they just make everything move a lot faster. So actions are these little presets here. These are stuff that I learned from Flern. If you're into photography and you would know about Flern, they teach a lot of retouching and stuff like that. But I created these actions based on what I learned from them. So when I go into here, there's the frequency separation, there's retouching light skin, there's a dodge and burn, there's dodge and burn lights, amazing eyes, and whitening the teeth. And these are, I basically go down this line and say, oh, okay, this helps me get through an image faster. So I'm gonna go into frequency separation. Frequency separation is basically creating two separate layers. So you're gonna create a layer of the texture, and then you're creating a layer of the color. So looking at this image, you can say, okay, hey, when I zoom in, I can see the texture of her skin, like all the divots and all the bumps and stuff like that. I can see the texture of her skin, but then you can also see the color of her skin. And frequency separation separates the two, so you have more control over it. And it's great for dealing with skin. So instead of me going into creating the frequency separation and putting in the numbers and stuff like that, every time I need to do an image, I create an action. I create one 16-bit and I create one 8-bit, depending on the size of the image I'm working with. This one would be best off as an 8-bit, I mean a 16-bit. So I'm gonna select it and then I'm gonna press play. When I do that, say time to blur the skin, and then boom. You guys can't really tell, but this has created a completely different layer. Hold on. Hello? Oh, okay, sorry. Just looking at it over here. So yeah, it creates a completely different layer. If I could get this over here, that's what I want. What is going on? There's something clicking that should not be clicking. Well, we're having a little bit of technical difficulties. I'm gonna give it a second. And I'm gonna pause it. All right, so I'm just gonna pause it until I get this back up, because I don't know what's going on with the images. I mean, with the software itself. I don't know if I was pressing the wrong thing or if I had something. All right, there we go. All right, so I'm gonna resume the share. So what it does is it created a blur image, and this is basically the separation itself. So like I say, it takes the texture away from the color. And they're asking me now, how much of the color do I want to blur? How much of the color do I want to soften? And I can raise this all the way up and say, okay, hey, but I don't see nothing at all. Or I could bring it back down to somewhere more reasonable. The rule of thumb I use is right before the eyes get extremely blurry, or right when I can't see the pores in the skin anymore. So I would say right about maybe 6.0 should be nice. And boom. It puts it, like you can't tell just by looking at it what happened, but it puts it into a nice full look. And you can see here, this is the texture and this is the color. If I make one of these invisible, you can see that this is the blur, and you'll see the texture is back. I didn't raise it that much, but I'll zoom in so you can see it just a little bit more. Let's go with the lips and the nose. So this is the texture only. Oh, sorry, let me turn off the underlying layers so you can really see. This is just the texture. So if you look at it, it is just the skin itself and the pores and all of that. And then if you look at this one, this is just the blurriness or the blur that I created with the color. So a lot of people don't go into major detail when they're doing the frequency separation. Some people say, oh, okay, boom, that's fine. You know, it works. But what I like to do is go into this here itself, and I want to remove any patchy tones or make the image a lot smoother. So if you can see on her forehead, so just a little bit, you have some patchy areas. This spot is just a little bit darker. This spot is just a little bit darker, and you have a little bit more light in certain areas. This is where I go into my clone stamp tool, because there isn't so much texture there that I'm playing with. I want to choose a color. Let's say I don't like how bright it is, or you know, however it is, and I wanted to make it just a little bit darker. I'm going to select the area that I like. I'm going to make this just a little bit larger so it can be easier to fill out. Bring my opacity down to, I'd say, about 15%. And then I'm only working on this layer now. I'm gonna take that area and then I'm gonna blend over it. And what you can see that I'm doing is removing the patchiness in itself with the clone stamp tool. And I use it like a paintbrush. Remove the patchiness in itself, create one color, and just paint around the entire image. Now, like I say, I won't do it perfectly, but just do it enough so you can see or have an idea of what I'm doing. But if you saw it before and you see it now, the little patchy spots that were in a head, on a head, like around this area, they're gone. But at the same time, because it's separated from the texture, when I apply the texture right back, it still looks like, okay, hey, it's skin, but it's not, it ain't a run out. So I'm gonna quickly do the nose and the cheeks. If you guys have any questions about this while I do this, feel free to ask. If you want to sing me a song, either one. Feel free to that. So you can see that I am basically just painting with the clone stamp tool. Instead of moving a specific spot, I take in the color and I am completely softening the color of the image without directly playing with the texture. So you can make it as small as you like, and get in those hard to reach places, and blend the skin tone properly. Another area I like to fix is the upper lip. Because we as humans, and nobody's perfect, sometimes you may have a model with a bit more fuzz. So what you want to do is take the darker spots, and you want to remove those darker spots. Again, it doesn't have to be perfect, but you just want to blend those in nicely with the rest of the skin and soften it up a little bit. Yeah, so I think that should be enough. Even around the eyes, I don't usually remove the eye lines because you don't want the person to look like a ghost or like they don't blink. You still want the image to look natural. So I'm trying to be the perfectionist. But if you look at it now, it's just a little bit softer than what it was beforehand. And once you add the texture back, the skin is a lot smoother, is a lot softer. And that's basically me using the frequency separation to separate the texture from the color and then blending the color in properly. So before the frequency separation, this was the skin after removing the blemishes. Taking that, doing the frequency separation and properly going into there, the skin still looks like it has skin. You can still see the pores on the skin, and it still looks good, but it's not patchy. It doesn't have the different colors that skin usually has. And a complete before, this is where we came from after we took the photo. It was a great image from the start. Remove the blemishes, and then we separate the frequency. So after that, and it doesn't have to stay to the face. You can also do the neck. Say when you're removing the blemishes, or when I remove the blemishes, if I see any necklines that I don't like, I'll just go there with my patch tool and I would slide those out as well. Right. So after the frequency separation, we're gonna go into, I don't want to touch on lightening the skin. But yeah, so I'll skip over that and we're gonna go into dodge and burn. Like I say, the actions make things just a lot easier. But if you wanna manually create a dodge or a burn, I create a new layer. I make this layer 50% gray. Yeah, I can see it. I can make this layer 50% gray at 100%, and this is what you get. Beautiful. But what you're doing is you're creating a layer to work on. You're creating an invisible layer to work on. So I will change this to either an overlay or a soft light, whichever one I feel suits spot more. I'm laying out of my box. You can't see what's here, but know that something is there, almost like a protective glass on her face, and say, okay, hey, you could work on this without really messing up the image or the pixels of the image itself. So with this here, I'm gonna turn this into a burn layer. Guys, remember, you should always name your layers.